Hello everyone, I'm Kyle Arthur, an Adobe specialist at the University of Arizona, and today we are going to be compositing and editing images in Photoshop. A composite is several images combined together in Photoshop to make one image, and today we're going to work on making this flamingo, cloud mingo image with the island and the fish. It was inspired by Ted Chinn's splash page. When you open up Photoshop, something similar to this pops up, and I thought it would be fun to remake, so that's what we'll be doing today. I'll open up Photoshop, and you can see this is kind of the finished product that we're going for. And I want to take this apart piece by piece just to show you all the steps that we're going to go through in order to create this. So you can see on my layers panel, as I turn off their visibility, you'll see we're going to include a sky for a background. We're going to take little pieces of flamingos and put them together to create these cloud flamingos. We'll add these mountains, we'll add the ocean, we'll add these clouds, and we'll add some fish. So all of these layers combined and put together, we're going to build ultimately this image. I have all my assets downloaded, so I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to create a new canvas. I'm going to make it 8.5 by 14. That's what I used to make this image, so that should work nicely. I want to make sure again that I have my units in inches instead of pixels, my resolution at 300. I'm going to hit create. Wow, zoomed in. I'll hit Command 0 and Command minus. You know what? I don't think I clicked the right size. Let's try that one more time. File, New. Yeah, looks like I did 8.5 by 11. So I'm going to go to print and click legal, 8.5 by 14. Much better. Hit create. There we go. That's the size I'm looking for. So my first step is going to be to start dragging in my assets. I have them here. I'm going to start with the mountain. And the best way to do this, I have found, is to just click and drag and drop it where I want it. And there it is. So I'm going to scale this island / mountain up quite a bit. I think something like this. You know, it's going to look different every time we make it. It's okay if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, or if this one doesn't look exactly like the one I just made. The learning is all the same. So I'm going to go ahead and accept this. I can always move it around later and rescale it if I'd like, but for right now I think that looks pretty good. I don't want the sky, I just want the mountain. So I'm going to use my selection tool, and I like to start with the object selection tool. If it doesn't work, I always move down to quick selection after that, but let's see if I can just select the mountain. See if Photoshop will do the work for me. There it is. Pretty good. If I want to include this part of the mountain down here, this foreground, I definitely can. Whoops. Oof. Let's try this again. I'm going to try selecting it one more time. Alright, I like that better. Sometimes doing it twice works. If not, I would have moved on to the quick selection tool. I'm going to hit mask, so I just want to make the background disappear. I don't want to do any destructive editing techniques. So to make the sky disappear, I'm going to make my stencil or my mask layer, and when I click that, the sky disappears, and then I just have this nice island. Alright, what do I want to drag in next? I think I'm going to do the ocean. So let's click and drag ocean, drop that in. I kind of like on this the rays of light, but I really on the top only like this upper part. So I'm going to zoom in. Place that right there. Let's try that. Well, we'll start up here. Let's try to select the water. Yep, worked great. So I can mask out the sky. And now I can move this down. Maybe something like that. That makes sense to me. Alright, so I have a foreground, a midground. Let's go ahead and drag in a background. So I will grab the sky. And I'm going to click and drag the sky and do something similar. So the way I'd like to do this is put the top in the corner, and then I'm just going to drag this till I think it's big enough. Now I don't want to stop here because this bottom part looks like ocean, and it'd be weird to have ocean here and then the island and then more ocean maybe behind it. So for perspective's sake, I'm going to expand it a little bit bigger and hit OK. Now I don't need to select the sky and mask out. All I really want is this to be the back layer. I want the ocean and the mountain to be in front of it, so I'm just going to grab the sky and drag it down behind the mountains, and there it is. And I can pick different part of the sky, whatever part of the sky you think is nice, but I think that's great. So I will leave that right there. Alright, I think at this point we're probably ready to start building our flamingo or flamingos. So let's start with the clouds. I'll just drag this in. The nice part about these clouds are that the background's already removed, so we don't have to do the tricky bit. We'll just place that somewhere that makes sense, and we can always move these around a little bit if we need to. Now, all of these images that I found, this cloud, this mountain, the ocean, these are all from Adobe Stock, which is an awesome free resource for you. Preferably, obviously, we would always like to use our own images, but for the sake of this demo, I don't really have easy access to the ocean, or we're going to add fish down here, or an island, and not always clouds. I could go to the zoo and photograph flamingos, but sometimes it's best to just use found images, but whenever possible, it's nice to use your own. Okay, let's try this cloud. We don't want the same cloud twice. I'll resize this. Move it maybe right there. I could turn it if I want. And just remember that if ever you want to change the scale of these after you set them and changed your mind, you just hit Command T to free transform, and you can continue to scale and resize. But every time you do so, you need to accept or decline your transformation. So I'll accept it. And now let's add some flamingo parts. We'll drag this in. So this is a little complicated because I want the flamingo's legs, but I can't really see the flamingo's legs because it's a little bit down the list on my layers. So I'm going to accept drag my layer to the top so that I can see my selection better, and then I can put that layer where it belongs again. So I'll use the selection tool again, and I'll just grab the legs, and you'll see what's really cool is down here I missed part of the foot, but Photoshop says, I think I know what you're trying to do, and it just selects most of the foot for you. As I said, that didn't do a great job, so let's try one more time. Alright, there we go. Not that it matters, this foot isn't going to be seen anyway, but I just want you to see that Photoshop kind of has some artificial intelligence that makes things really easy for us. So I'm going to go ahead and mask these legs out. That hides everything else. I have these disembodied legs, which is scary and creepy, but we'll make it better soon. Hold on tight. I'm going to hit Command T to resize and scale my image. I'll put it about where I think looks right, and again, you can always move these later. Now, I don't need to be careful about the selection I made on the top and the bottom, and I don't need to cut those off. What I'll do is I'll just move this layer down behind the mountain, but in front of the sky. And then you can see those legs are just hidden. So these clouds hide the top of it. So I just don't have to be that careful with my selection, which is nice. Let's drag in some more flamingo legs. I'll do the same thing as before, except drag it to the top. Yeah, I like these ones. We'll make this selection, even though I missed the bottom. Photoshop figures that out for me. It's very nice. Let's make another mask. Get my move tool or click V to grab the move tool, and we'll resize these to a size that makes sense. It's kind of up to you. Feel like I'm bigger, smaller. I think that's good enough. This one's a little closer than this one, so it should be a little larger. So I'll accept that and drag that behind the clouds again. Alright, we're getting there. Let's go ahead and grab their heads and necks. I have two flamingos here. I think the easiest way to do this would just be the same thing. Let's drag it to the top. We will temporarily decapitate this one. Okay, see, it does a great job noticing the difference in pixels between this and saying, I think Kyle wants to cut the edge right there, which I do. We'll make a mask. Almost perfect. Well, let's just see if it's perfect. I will drag the flamingo's head behind the clouds. Looks pretty good. It's a little too big, so I'm going to hit Command T. Scale it down a little, and then looks pretty good. On this one, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to drag in that same image, drag it to the top, use my object selection tool to one more time take the head and the neck, hit the mask tool. So this is fairly repetitive, the steps, which is nice. We're getting a lot of good practice doing the same thing over and over again. And then I will drag that flamingo under the cloud, maybe resize it a bit. Command T, maybe it's a little too big. Maybe you want to rotate your flamingo a little bit. And there we have it. Looks pretty nice. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make these clouds pink. There's a dozen ways to change the color of something in Photoshop. The way I like to do it, mostly because it's non-destructive and doesn't add an additional layer. You can see I'm starting to get a lot of layers here. Is I'm going to click on a cloud and I'm going to go to the bottom here where it says, it's right next to my layer mask, where it says FX. And that's just means effects, not like EFF, but FX. Okay, so I'm going to click Effects, and I'm going to choose Color Overlay. This is going to allow me to put a color on top of my flamingo. So when I click that, now I've already done this, so let's say, let's pull up this dialog. Let's say it'll probably be black at first, and so that'll make your cloud black. What you want to do is, let's see, you'll choose, for the blend mode, you'll make sure it says overlay. Yours will probably start at normal, and it'll be black or gray or something, and it'll just be a solid color. You're going to change your blend mode to overlay. We want a color to lay over this and kind of blend and interact with the cloud. Once your blend mode is changed, you can then pick a color. So I'm going to click on this black box. I'm going to use my color picker, which is just kind of like this eyedropper, and what you can see is I can go and click on different parts of my image. I can make it blue or green or yellow, or I can try to make it match my flamingo. It looks a little like cotton candy. There we go, that's pretty nice. And then I'll click OK, and I'll click OK, and now my flamingo's pink. I could do the same thing for this cloud, or a really nice tool we already talked a bit about, duplicate, in previous tutorials. So if I hold down Option on my keyboard, grab where it says FX and drag it to this layer, it's going to duplicate that effect, and it's going to apply to both of the clouds and both of the flamingos. So at this point, I'm going to take a pause and clean up my layers a little bit. It's getting a little messy, so all these flamingo pieces, I want to group them together. So I'm going to click the top one and then hold Shift and click the bottom one. I'm going to hit this folder to create a new group, or I can hit Command G on my keyboard. I'm going to name this Cloud Mingos. Okay. So these are all still separate, but they're in a group, so they're a little less, it's a little less disorganized. And I think I'm going to also group my clouds. There we go. All right, now I'm looking a little bit more organized. And we'll move on to the last step, which is adding the fish. So let's grab the fish, drag them in the same way. These fish need to be on top. All right, they're on the top layer. I can hit Command T and maybe resize them a little bit. Maybe I want it to fill. Yeah, I think I like it like that. Now hit Enter or the check. Now, this looks great, and I'm going to blend this together, but to make it blend a little more seamlessly, I'm going to change, this is a little more blue, and this is a little more cyan, which is like turquoise or like a teal. So I'm going to change the color of this image. Again, a dozen ways to do it, but I think it's a good time for us to learn an adjustment layer, which live up here, or also just next to the blend mode, the mask, layer mask. We have this little black and white cookie, it kind of looks like, right there, and that's going to give me an adjustment layer. I'm going to change the hue and saturation of the water. Now when I click this, you're going to see it does give me a completely new layer. So everything underneath, if I change my hue, it's going to affect everything underneath and give me like these real psychedelic colors. I don't want to do that. I only want it to affect this fish layer. So I'm going to clip this layer to the one underneath it, and I do that by hitting this button that clips them together. Now you're going to see that it's only going to affect the layer right underneath it. So now when I click and drag, it's only affecting that layer. So I'm just going to drag this around till I think I've matched up these colors a little bit. I can change the saturation or the lightness. I think it needs to be a little lighter. You know, and that's pretty good, pretty close. So I'll put that away. And then I can start to blend these together. Now this is really where masks start to shine. Masks aren't only for if you have a selection and trying to make things disappear. You're going to see I'm going to click the fish layer and add a mask. And I have a completely white mask. And we know that when I paint with my paintbrush on a mask, it's going to create that stencil, right? And it's going to make that part disappear. I can see right here what I'm doing. And then if I paint with white, it's all going to come back. So what I want to do is kind of make this top, switch back to black, make this top blend with the bottom, but that's a little too intense. So what I can do is I can right click and turn down my hardness a little bit so it's less of a, you can see if I turn it all the way up, it's going to make like a perfect dot. If I turn it all the way down, it's going to give me kind of like a fuzzy dot. And Z. So I kind of want a fuzzy dot, and I'm going to turn my opacity down. I'm going to start at, let's say, 35 is pretty good, and I'm going to get rid of this hard line. And then I'm going to turn my opacity down a little more, maybe to 20, and I can make this a little bit bigger, my brush a little larger, using the bracket. And I'm just going to click and drag a little bit and kind of start to blend this. Now if I've gone too far, I can always change this to white, and like bring it back a little bit. I don't want the fish. And you can see, if I hold Option, you can see this is the mask I'm painting. So I've made this kind of blurry, weird mask that has helped me blend these fish into this water. And that's essentially it. There's more we could do. We could always, you can always improve and keep working and changing your image indefinitely. But sometimes it's best just to know when to quit. So I'm going to click File. I am going to export as, I'll change this to a JPEG if it's a PNG. It's just, I think traditionally we use JPEGs for images or pixel-based images. This all looks pretty good. I'll hit export and choose where I'd like to export my image. Wouldn't be a bad idea to name it. I could save it to my desktop or wherever you'd like to save your file and just hit save. So that's it. I hope you had a good time and learned something, and we will see you next time.